Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Isn't it a bit strange that our entire country is fixated on this so-called Aryan Khan drug or cruise party case when there is so much else is happening in the country? So let's not judge anybody. Let's not judge public opinion. We are not so stupid to do that. And let's not judge the media. Let's just look at the situation. How did we get here and what brought us here? To understand that, we have to go back to where this law, NDPS, Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act came in. So this maniacal global war on drugs began in the 60s because that was a time when there was a lot of drug use in the world. It was also the peak of hippiedom, Beatlemania, psychedelia, etc., etc. And all the countries then thought that drugs were now going to destroy humanity. Drugs were going to destroy the world or humankind. And that's why many tough laws were created. Now, in most mature democracies, with more informed analysis, rational analysis over time, these laws have been modernized, but some retain it. For example, the toughest dictatorships from Iran to China, they retain those very draconian laws because it suits dictators. They love them. But also some elected autocracies like, say, Singapore and Malaysia, they retain them. India, to that extent, is, as a more proper democracy, is the odd man in. India has also retained those laws. That's why this tragic and ugly commotion over the Aryan Khan case and before that involving poor Riya Chakravarti underlines the mess that we've got ourselves into. Now, I'm not pronouncing anyone innocent or guilty. I wouldn't dare do that almost in any case that is sub judice. Least of all one that falls under a law so draconian and so outdated that even the judge at this stage is left with no option but to make a presumption of guilt. Now you will ask me why? Because this is one of those laws where the presumption or the principle of innocent until proven guilty is reversed. So under this law, guilty until proven innocent. That's why I asked the question earlier on, how did we get here? That's why the near impossibility of bail at this stage, unless it is a very brave judge who, as our former Attorney General Mukul Rohtgi says, puts facts above the law. That is what he recommends. It will be a very brave judge in the trial court to do that. So unless a brave judge puts facts above the law, as Mukul Rohtgi suggests, it's not going to happen. The bail is not going to happen. And if you can find me some judges like that at a trial court level, that's a very junior level, then I might be able to find you a bench on the Supreme Court who will finally start hearing that anonymous electoral bonds case, which has been sitting in cold storage now for years. We like to say that the law is an ass. Even so, this particular law, Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act, first promulgated in 1985, is a species by itself. It is so unique, draconian, impractical, ineffective, exploitative and prone to misuse that to use the familiar description of the laws would be an insult to the ass. I'll tell you why. This law was designed to play to the gallery at a time. It's gone through several iterations and amendments and dilutions in nearly 4 decades and yet remains a disaster both for the citizens and also for the war on drugs because it actually achieves the opposite. Because this law is a blessing for headline hunting and corrupt policemen, a jackpot for lawyers and a big burden and a pain for our judges. We know by now that NCB or Narcotics Control Bureau has found no drugs on Aryan, as they didn't on Riya Chakravarti. But there are WhatsApp chats that suggest allegedly an intention to buy or consume drugs, or maybe some consumption has taken place in the past. That is the presumption you make from WhatsApp chats. You haven't seen anything happening. Also, the guy with Aryan Khan allegedly carried some prohibited substance. So Aryan Khan also had quote-unquote conscious possession of the drugs. You would normally have been flummoxed. How can vicarious liability apply in a criminal case? But then remember, you are not dealing with a normal civilized law. This law, in its preconditions for bail and insistence on evidence of innocence rather than of guilt, is worse than UAPA, maybe a bit like its older avatar, UAPA's older avatar, TADA, if not worse. How did we get here? Blame the Beatles. You remember Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds? Or so you can blame John Lennon. Who wrote it? I'm not digressing and I'm not being frivolous. The Beatles represent the 1960s when psychedelia, hippiedom, substance abuse highs overwhelmed a disenchanted Western youth. In India, it came maybe a decade later. So that was our Dam Maro Dam phase in the 70s. So in India, it came a little bit later. But it was at the peak of this phase in the West that the Beatles produced Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which was popularly seen to be a kind of nudge towards LSD, which was a popular, very expensive and very prohibited and very illegal drug those days. Of course, John Lennon denied it, and later he tried to convince us all by saying, no, he was only using imagery from Alice in Wonderland. But you can leave it there. So it was at the peak of this concern, this paranoia about drugs, that in 1967, nations of the world met in Paris. So in July 1961, they met in Paris in a convention called, for some reason, Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs. And they approved on 13th of July a resolution that said that every signatory will pass within the next 25 years a law so strong that this will destroy the scourge of drugs from the face of the earth. Credit to India, it lived up to its reputation of doing things at the last hour. It was therefore that the NDPS Act of 1985 came about. By this time, the Republicans were back in America. Jimmy Carter had one term. Republicans were back. For Richard Nixon during the Vietnam and anti-war protests, the war on drugs had become like a jihad. Ronald Reagan, now again a Republican, picked up that conservative thread. Rajiv Gandhi, as the new Prime Minister, was reaching out to him and America. So it seems like that this strong law was also a kind of a sweetener. Now, tossed up in that toxic brew of conservative puritanism, that's the American side, geopolitics, and feudal family ties. And I will tell you why I say feudal family ties. Because that involved the case of Adil Shahryar. He was jailed in the US on a drug charge. But Gandhi family apparently wanted him out, and there was good reason for them to want him out, because Latvian at that point was rife with rumors of murky deals. He was the son of their close family friend and retainer Muhammad Yunus. We will need someone who watched that phase from closer to tell us exactly what happened, and was there a quid pro quo between his release, his getting presidential pardon, and the enactment of this law. But the fact is that it was in that messy situation that this law came about. This monstrosity of a law came about that not only laid down the burden of innocence on the accused, but also a mandatory death sentence for possessing large amounts of drugs. Yes, I repeat, a mandatory death sentence like in Iran or Singapore. This left the judge no option. India passed a law like that in our lifetimes. Nixon might have lost Vietnam, but his ghost was winning his version of the war on drugs, especially in India. Of course, in America also, it was in that period that cannabis also got illegalized. It's now being legalized in state after state there. Now, everyone involved in law and justice in India knew a blunder had been made, but who was to question it? Hang the drug addicts, hang the drug peddlers. How can you fight with something like that? You will need to be very brave and very wise. And usually in politics, you don't find people like that. And if you find them, they don't win elections. Now, corrections followed every few years because we knew that mistakes were made. The first came in 1988 when punishment for personal use of drugs were reduced to 1 to 2 years. Earlier, it was much more. So it was reduced. Good news, at least some good change was made. But again, in 1989, there was a hiccup when Ronald Reagan pushed back again because he again wanted a tougher law in India. And once again, India caved in, and India made all offenses or all arrests under this law non-bailable, also brought in the clause of forfeiture of property and strengthened the injunction on the judge to give a mandatory death sentence. Only 2 brave MPs spoke against this in Parliament. One was Jayanti Patnaik of the Congress Party, and second Kamal Murarka of the Janata Dal. Now, many high courts in the country read down many sections of the law. Supreme Court also read down some sections of the law. In 1994, P.V. Narasimha Rao's government set up a committee to look at what could be done about these sections. Now, committees take their time, so they took their time and it went through our system slowly, as everything does. All files go into orbit. This file finally landed someplace. So in 2001, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister, amendments were made in the law. Amendments were made in the law to soften some parts of it, some sections of it. Again, a decade later, the Bombay High Court in 2011, in a brilliant judgment, read down the mandatory death sentence. That again forced the central government to set up a committee. That's the first thing to do, and to look at the mandatory death sentence. That took another 3 years. In 2014 March, through an amendment, the mandatory death sentence was removed. And I'll tell you a little bit later what did that mandatory death sentence yield. Now, much else remained in the law. Sections 37 and 54, for example, which make a presumption of guilt on the flimsiest of suspicion, like I'm going to have a blast at the party, if you say in a WhatsApp chat. Or Section 67, which empowers an officer to summon just anyone, essentially as a witness, not as an accused or a suspect, essentially as a witness, but then confront them with any questions, including hurl at them the most serious allegations. Do you do drugs? Do you sell drugs? Do you distribute drugs? Of course, you do all that. Stop lying just because you are the child of such and such person, or just because you are a superstar. You can't lie. Don't lie in front of me. No. I don't do drugs. I don't sell drugs, etc., etc. What could be the headline? Perfectly legal. I don't do drugs, says superstar so and so. Or I don't do drugs, says the son or daughter of superstar so and so, grilled by NCB. Right? Perfectly legal. It's also perfectly immoral canard. Actually, this is par for Gestapo style questioning. If you think I'm exaggerating, imagine yourself or your child at the other end of this. This empowered these agencies to summon Deepika Padukone, Rakul Preet Singh, and many others in the Riya Chakrabarti phase, giving our TV channels a license to run their most glamorous pictures for days. Even now, see what's happening. The latest now is that poor Ananya Pandey is cavorting in a pool, even as the headline is, she's being grilled by the NCB. Now, laws like these will be misused and yield nothing. For evidence, read this piece by scholars Neha Singhal and Naveed Ahmed from legal think tank Vidhi Legal. I'm sharing a link with you. Please go to the descriptions and find that. We published it in the print earlier. In 2018, they showed that 81,778, that is 81,778, 81,778 people were charged under NDPS Act in India, and out of these, 99.9% were for personal consumption. These are all nashedis, ganjidis as we call them, or addicts. Somebody has 20 grams, 30 grams, 40 grams, like that. They were the ones who were arrested and charged under this very draconian law. Read this with a 2019 report called Magnitude of Substance Abuse in India from the central government's Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. It said at this point, India had 30 million, that is 3 crore cannabis users. Now, how many jails will you need to build if you were to lock up every hash user in a jail? That's a stupid idea. Plus, this report showed that another 6 million people, another 60 lakh people in India had opioid disorders, opium-linked disorders. What will you do with them? People doing hard drugs were only 8.5 lakhs. Are you disappointed by that number? I can't blame you, because if you saw that monstrosity of a film, Udta Punjab, I think one of the stupidest, unfairest films made. If you saw that monstrosity of a film, I'm repeating, Udta Punjab, you'd imagine there were 20 times that many coke snorters and heroin pushers in that small state of Punjab. It's one thing for a brain-dead movie to malign the fine people of an entire state because it feeds into a folklore. But the problem is that folklores lead to bad laws, and bad laws lead to bad outcomes. The National Law School at Delhi University conducted a study that showed that between 2000 and 2015, I tell you about what happened to that mandatory death sentence. Between 2000 and 2015, that is in 15 years, only 5 such death sentences were handed out by trial courts. Only 5. Of these 5, 4 were commuted to life imprisonment in appeal, and 1, hold your breath, was acquitted. This led to so few death sentences. So you might say, what is the problem then, Shekhar Gupta? What you're complaining about? So the problem is that when the drug authorities catch somebody or caught somebody with a law like that, they said, look, I'll have you hanged because there is a mandatory sentence that the judge has to give you. The fear that spreads, the paranoia, the potential that creates for corruption, for blackmail, etc. That is what needs to be understood. We've picked up a sledgehammer, whereas plastic surgeons find needles who are required. Inevitably, it's been handed over to people who are prone to misuse it, this sledgehammer. The story we see unfolding on our TV screens right now is of its blatant misuse. Innocent or guilty is not even an issue yet. This is no time for cheap thrills. When you look at your TV screens, think about it. Is this time for cheap thrills? And if you think it doesn't matter, it's happening to someone else, remember tomorrow it can be one of us at the other end of it, or any of our children.